We are pleased to be joined by Veronica Williams, a veteran and independent candidate running in Texas's 23rd Congressional District. I want to say welcome to the show and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for Brandon for having me here. Thank you.
Yeah, the pleasure is all ours. So I want to start with the war in Iran. It's been going on for weeks now. Trump kind of just stalled peace talks that we thought we were going to have. Obviously, it's cost us billions of dollars. Over a dozen Americans have died. What are your thoughts both on the war and then the fact that Trump has done this without getting congressional approval so far?
So I'm totally against the war in Iran. You know, clearly we were pulled into this war by Israel. So anything to do with Israel taking us to war, I highly disagree with. Not only because, Congress didn't approve of this war, but also because we have service members that are losing their lives for what? A war that is not ours. We were not attacked by Iran. So I totally against our service members losing their lives, getting injured. I'm against our military families experiencing all these levels of stress and trauma. Like I said, I don't agree with fighting a war that was not, there's no, they didn't attack us. So I disagree with going into a war that we have no interest in.
Yeah, so just kind of sticking on foreign policy, what are your thoughts, kind of like how America foreign policy or spending aid to these countries should look? We obviously give Israel a lot of money. People kind of
Mhm.
disagree with what's happening in Palestine, with how they're expanding to Lebanon, as you spoke to, us kind of getting drug into the Iran war with them. We also give money to Ukraine. Ukraine, there's kind of a different calculus to it. Obviously, Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is more closely aligned with us. So there's different calculuses, but obviously people have different feelings about them. So what are your thoughts kind of just on the way we spend money and that we should going forward?
Well, I totally disagree with sending billions to Israel. I mean, they're a country that they're a self-sustaining country. All the billions of money that we send, let's be real. A lot of it is also spent on attacking Palestinians and the ongoing genocide war. We don't need to be funding that. We fund their healthcare. They have universal healthcare, and we don't have that here. So why are we funding Israel? So I totally disagree with that. Last year, we also sent billions to Argentina. Why are we doing that when we are $48 trillion in debt, if not more by now, because of the daily cost of the Iran war? So I'm totally against sending all that money overseas when we, the people, need it here. We need to fund our schools. We need to have universal health care. We need to take care of our own human beings here in the United States. Now, I know that a lot of people are for sending some money to Ukraine, but at the same time, again, I go back to we are $48 trillion in debt and we're not taking care of our own people. So should we continue to send money to Ukraine? We really need to think about that because what is Europe doing to help Ukraine? You know, at what point should it be also the responsibility of our NATO allies to chip in a little bit more?
Sure. And then switching to America, what are your thoughts on ICE? We've seen ICE murder numerous Americans. We've seen them defy court orders. There's obviously a big discussion going on with the funding right now. What are your thoughts on them as an agency? Are there reforms necessary? Should they be abolished? Kind of what should ICE look like going forward?
Moving forward, you know, a lot of people say abolish ICE, but then a lot of people on the other side are saying, but we still need to protect our American citizens and our borders. And I 100% agree with protecting our borders. I think it's even more important now because the US, let's be real, has pissed off a lot of countries. So I think as Americans, we're a little bit more vulnerable to being attacked. So yes, let's protect our borders. But also, if there's people here that should not be, and I'm talking about undocumented people, before all this craziness with the ICE raids, we still had a process where those people had their day in court, had their due process, and depending on what the judge said, they were either sent back home or they were allowed to proceed and move forward in our legal system to stay. We have to go back to that to treat people in a humane way. There's no reason why we shouldn't treat our fellow human beings in a humane way.
So, kind of just staying on the topic of immigration, what do you think, or what reforms to our immigration system, if any, do you support? Kind of namely thinking of things like, should undocumented immigrants have a pathway to citizenship? Like asylum cases. Do any of these things need reformed in your view?
100%, Brandon. And you know what? The reason why there's no reform is because both parties want to keep it this way. Why? Because isn't it a coincidence that every single election cycle, it's always talk about the border, the border, the border. It's an amazing talking point. So no one really wants to fix it. But should we have reforms? Absolutely. Just to give you an example, Brandon, here in the state of Texas, there's a lot of dreamers here. And did you know here in the state of Texas, the Governor Abbott wants to take away their opportunity to work? How are these families supposed to support each other? Their children. With this economy that sucks for the working class, pretty much for everyone. If you're not wealthy, this economy sucks, right? So in taking away their right to work, how are they supposed to feed their families? It takes two adults in that home to work. So anyhow, I say all that to say that our dreamers should have a pathway to citizenship. They weren't asked to be here. They were brought here as children. A lot of these dreamers are already adults with families that have married our fellow American citizens. So why haven't they received their American citizenship? So yes, there is a need to create a pathway to citizenship. And then not only for dreamers, but also for people that have been here as good citizens, as good residents, as good community members, to also have, you know, the status of an American citizen.
And on the Epstein files, we have the acting attorney general, Todd Blanche, saying that, no more will be released, essentially wiping their hands of it, saying we've done enough. Despite this, we know there's been a few million files released, but there's a few million that have yet to be released. Do you think Congress should be working to continue to release these? And if you were in Congress, how would you do so to make sure that transparency is being had?
Listen, I'm for releasing the unredacted files of the Epstein class, no matter who's on it. I'm an independent. I don't care if there's Republicans or Democrats. I don't care if there's billionaires or corporate people. I don't care. We need to see accountability, because if not, what continues to happen? Clearly, there's a certain class of people that get away with everything, right? And then there's a group of people that are obligated and forced to follow laws. And clearly, that's the wealthy. And then that's everyone else. It's you and I.